It's time for the big show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Andy Gallo.
And I'm Country Jim.
And, man, I tell you what, we got a lot of stuff lined up for her. We got Liz Talley going to be on our guest spot.
Yes.
And we've got a trivia question that I dug up, and I'm going to lay it on Country Jim and see if he can come up with the right answer.
I love trivia. It's just trivia is what it is.
Plus, we've got the Country Jim story on this episode, too, which, talking about a storyteller, Country Jim can tell a story.
Everybody.
When you were in school, did you tell stories?
You know,
I mean, grammar school, elementary, whatever.
maybe not that early. I was known as a jokester. I think I've told you before on here that when I graduated from high school, the senior class, the yearbook people, put a saying underneath your picture that they thought epitomized who you were. Mm-hmm. And underneath my picture, it said, "Trouble sits but lightly upon his shoulders." And
what does that mean?
It means that I was a silly, goofy guy.
Okay.
You know, can I go ahead and tell another story just came to mind?
You can do that. We'll just go ahead and do the Country Jim story of the week there on this episode. Go ahead.
All right, well, this is not one at all. This is a true story, not one that I intended to tell.
That'll work.
You know, because of social media, and I get it that there's a lot that's not good about social media. Misinformation, hateful kind of spirits that can really knock you down. But sometimes you can connect with people that were very important in your life. I was born and raised there in West Tennessee back in the 1940s and moved away from there when I was in the ninth grade. And so I was disconnected with those childhood fellow students of mine from elementary school and middle school. But because of social media, I became friends with maybe 7 or 8 of the kids that I went to school with.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, I would tell about the Baptist church where my mother played piano, and the lady who is the music director now at that church, all these decades later.
Still there.
We are friends on Facebook.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know it. It's really powerful. But we were going to go to Nashville one time, and so one of my fellow students in elementary school lives in Memphis, and so she said, "I wish you and your wife would just stop here on your way and spend the night." So we did.
Wow.
And she told a story about me, and I do not remember this happening. Evidently, it happened a number of times. But me knowing me, I absolutely believe that it's a true story. She said that she absolutely, when in the cafeteria, we would have pork and beans or like collard greens or something.
I like pork and beans. Pork and beans are good.
I do, but she liked the beans. But why would they call it pork and beans when very rarely would you get a piece of pork?
Right.
And it was just a little chunk of fat meat, right?
It was fat. Yeah, it was a fat meat, yeah.
And she said that was totally disgusting to her. And she said that when I would get a piece of that on my fork, and I would walk over to her table and get right in front of her and eat that piece of fat meat. I have no recollection of that.
Yeah. That's something I think you would do.
Oh, absolutely.
Huh?
I'm sure it was me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I was going to tell...
That's good.
I was going to tell a couple of my little church stories about heard once about the preacher who was delivering his message, and he noticed these 2 men out there. They were friends, and they were sitting side by side, and it seems that one of those men had gone to sleep. It was a matter of some irritation to the preacher.
That happens quite often in churches around the country.
I would think that it could happen frequently. But the preacher was a little irritated, so he said to the one that was still awake,
right?
He said, "Will you wake him up?" And the guy said, "Well, you put him to sleep, you wake him up."
I think I knew where that was going.
Yeah.
I just knew where it was going. Well, we've got some trivia. We've got some trivia, and I'm going to lay this on you and see if you can figure this one out. You know, Marty Robbins, he had the song El Paso. Well, in 1976, he had the song El Paso City, and he wrote that song as well. Now, he claimed he wrote the song in less than 5 minutes, and it also reached, of course, top of the Billboard charts. It's a huge song, very big song, and a long song, too, over 5 minutes long, which was really interesting back in when actually it was 4 minutes and like 38 seconds. But the thing about that is, and this is kind of a side note about, has nothing to do with the trivia question, but radio stations back in those days, if it was over 3 minutes, typically they would not play the song.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
It was the kiss of
and
death.
that was still going on in the 80s back when I was in radio. If it was over 3 minutes, oh man, I don't know. You know, and back in the 80s, there was a lot of songs that were over 4 minutes. But anyway, back to the trivia question. So the question would be, what did he often give for the reason that he was able to write two very successful songs about the same event so easily? And they are. They're very linked. So what here, and it's a multiple choice, so this makes it easy for you here. One, reincarnation, extensive formal music training, his interest in the Old West, or he was had financial difficulty and needed the money. Which one was it? Reincarnation, formal music training, interested in the Old West, or he was had financial problems and needed the money. Which one?
Well, I would kick out, first of all, reincarnation. Although with trivia, I know how that is. It could be. But I would say that it's either his interest in the Old West, but he had the Gunfighter Ballads, those albums. Needed the money. No, I would say it was his interest in the Old West.
Financial difficulty, and he needed the money.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? I thought the Old West too.
Yeah.
Because when I was looking it up, it did not tell me the answer right away. So I thought that was kind of neat there. Just a little trivia for you to.
Well, a little trivia about Liz Talley. I left Kentucky. I lived back east. I lived in Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky, and South Carolina. And I knew about Liz Talley and her music before I ever came to Texas.
Wow, you had said that. That is very interesting.
Yeah, I had a music friend, Dusty Owens, who Dusty had been in country music. That was his stage name. His real name was Kaharski.
That's an interesting.
Yeah, he was from Michigan originally, but he was on the country music show there in Wheeling, West Virginia, the Wheeling Jamboree, and he was the headliner there, and he wrote a song called "Once More" that became a hit for Roy Acuff and for the Osborne Brothers. And he was really, really very successful. And then there was a fiddle player by the name of Buddy Spiker who had a come to Jesus kind of experience. And so he really influenced Dusty Owens. And so Dusty Owens when I met him in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s, he still had a 1956 Cadillac that was left over from back in the day he would get two brand new Cadillacs, one for him, one for the band. And he and his wife sang duets together. And he gave all of that up to go to Bible college. So it was in Bible college where I met him, because I went to Bible college also.
Son of a preacher man.
Yeah, and so he started way back when, like an internet radio kind of thing, and he was the first one to tell me, and I would hear the music of Liz Talley.
And we've got Liz Talley on the show.
Yes.
On our guest spot today, we've got Liz Talley. Liz, how you doing? Welcome to the podcast.
I am great. It's good to be here with you guys.
Hey, I've got going to start off with a question. How long have you been playing music?
Wow, that's a $1 million question. It scares me when I think about it. Maybe 40 years, I guess. 30, 40 years.
Liz, tell us a little bit about your childhood and your early musical experiences.
Okay. Well, I've always loved music, and I wanted to be a drummer. And one Christmas I had asked for drums, but my mother bought me a guitar. And I was not a happy camper, so I improvised. I took a bar stool and her spatulas from the kitchen, and then I played along in my room with Ray Price and Johnny Bush records with those spatulas. So when she'd start cooking, she'd have to come in my room and take her spatulas back.
And you know, I wore out about 2 or 3 of those 8-track tapes from old Johnny Bush, let me tell you.
Well, yeah, that's the best stuff ever. I learned how to play shuffles very young, and I used to babysit for a band. I babysat all their kids. There's about 10 of them things. And one night, their drummer broke his arm. And they had been kind of working with me on real drums. I didn't own any, but they had a set of drums, and she was teaching me guitar chords. And so they came to my parents and said, our drummer broke his arm, and we don't know anybody. They were from New York. Can we have your kid tonight? And so I went and played the gig. My mother babysat, and then from then on, I was their drummer, filling in because their drummer was out. And when he got where his arm was better and wanted his job back, they said, sorry, we've already molded her into our drummer, and we're keeping her. So that was how I got started.
Liz, who are some of the people that you got to drum with? Maybe some names we might know.
Well, probably the Wanda Jackson. I've worked with her several times. Pretty Miss Norma Jean several times. Barbara Fairchild several times. Got to open shows for John Connolly, George Jones a couple times, Mel Tillis, Lacey J. Dalton, and I'm kind of drawing a blank. There's a few others, but I've always had a great time doing it, and it meant so much to me.
Where did you grow up at?
Over in the Sharpstown area.
Houston, Texas. So people maybe we've got listeners in India and the UK.
Oh,
so
great.
we need to let them know where we're at here. So.
You know, a funny story that probably people don't know is I was a very big softball player. And I was a pitcher, fast pitch, and a second baseman. And we did tournaments. We went everywhere. But I also started playing drums in bands. And we'd play tournaments all day. I'd change clothes, kind of take a sponge bath in a Conoco station, and then go to gigs and play. And finally my parents said, we can't do it anymore. You got to make a choice. Either you play music or you play softball. Well, I was making money playing music, and I liked it, so I went that route.
Tell me a little bit about... I've been around here a long time. I left Kentucky and came to Texas in '79, but I think I had heard about you even before I came to Texas from Dusty Owens, who was a friend of mine. But there are a lot of guys who play country music around here and got bands, but I think it's maybe been more difficult for the gals to have a band, and I think you've done a really great job of getting connections, playing in clubs, playing private parties. But have you got any kind of feelings about women in music and it being a harder road?
Well, it's very hard. I mean, even the stories from Kitty Wells, Loretta Lynn, all the girl singers that came back in the day, they're all inspirations to me. Especially Dolly Parton. If you think you can do it, do it. And it's very difficult, even still, for girls to get the bookings versus the guys. They always want guy songs, And so I always have to have a guy with me that can sing the songs. But I also just kind of went the private party route. I got involved with a convention center and a lot of the booking agencies, and they still call me today because I deliver. It's a business, and I can deliver what they want, you know. Even your daughter played a great job with me and had an agent call me and said, we need a band for a, what's that thing, the horse races, when the horses race.
Racetrack?
The big show that the horses do, the Kentucky Derby. That's right, I couldn't think of it. And they said, can you do a Kentucky Derby party? And I said, well, golly, I don't know. I've never done it before. So I called Hillary and I called Brian, and we dressed up in the hats and the clothes, and we learned the music, and we went and did a Kentucky Derby party.
That's cool. That is great. What is your favorite girl song that you like to sing?
Oh, man, that's tough. There's so many. You know, if Loretta Lynn's stuff is great. I love Leona Williams. I love Dolly, Coat of Many Colors. It's hard to name a favorite. I'm a big Patti Loveless fan. I love stuff that's good, that's country music, and that people can relate to. It hits an emotion. I like to watch. I'm a people watcher, and I watch the people and see the emotions that it triggers, and that tells me that's something good.
You know, Liz, in fact, we're here where you just finished a gig, and my grandson playing steel for you. But one thing that I think you...
Was that a plug? Was that a shameless plug? Or was that...
It was a wonderful plug.
It was wonderful.
But, and you know, you mentioned roots country, the old classic country singers. But I think one way you've been more successful than me and a lot of others is that you've put bands together where you could do some crossover material. You could do country rock. You could do, multi-dimensional, not just the old roots country. And so you've appealed to a broader base of fans, and that's got you more gigs, I think. You want to talk about that?
Absolutely. You know, if we could do just straight country music all the time, I'd love it. And that's what I do when I do opera shows or concerts, opening acts, because that's what they book me for. But for the private party, the convention world, you've got to be more versatile. And so we do some classic rock that appeals to everyone. CCR, ZZ Top. I mean, you just got to, people recognize that. George Strait, Alan Jackson, you know, things that people recognize. Patti Loveless, Johnny Cash, that is an Americana act nowadays, you know?
Right.
And everybody knows that. So I do Ring of Fire. You know, you play to the people. You don't play for you. You play to your fans or the people, the event. And that's what I try to do.
You ever do any Johnny and June?
We do. We do Jackson. And sets the crowd on fire. Yep. They love it. They love it.
Well, you know, I'm not a songwriter, and I don't do any original material. Both my daughters do. I think you're kind of like me as far as mainly doing cover songs, right?
I do. Now, I wrote a song called Texas in Your Swing, and that's what put me on XM radio. And I was looking for songs, and my good friend, Pretty Miss Norma Jean, she took me to Branson, and she says, well, we're going to go meet Leona. And I said, okay, great. And so, lo and behold, at the theater, there she was, Leona Williams, and she's talking to me about, well, do you write, you know, and this, that, and the other? And I said, well, a little bit, kind of start to. I've got a song idea, and so I sang her a little bit of what I had, and she says, you come over to my house tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and we're going to write that song. That's great. And that's what we did. And I drove around the block about 10 times, scared to death, because I thought, I can't go over there and write with Leona Williams. My gosh. which I couldn't even hardly leave the house. And Norma Jean said, I'm going to kick you out of the house. I'm going to lock the door. You need to go over there with Leona. So we talked a while, and we just hit it off, and we wrote that song. And I ran into Bill Mack, and I handed him that tape, and he called me the next day, and he said, well, I'm going to play your song on Willie's Place. You better be ready. I said, wait. I had to jump out of bed and get dressed, run to my car, and turn the car on to listen to myself. You know, most people want to do that. And I just couldn't believe he played it. So that really gave me a big jump start to doing shows, opening acts, traveling in Europe. I did several things in Europe, which is cool when people sing your songs back to you. It's like, wow, this is something else.
Right. Very good. Well, I tell you what, we sure do appreciate you being with us here on our guest spot on the podcast. And Liz Talley.
Thanks for listening to The Big Show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
This has been a Unicap Media presentation.